Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. So let's begin our discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 12 important articles for a detailed and comprehensive analysis so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. Now, before we start, I have something very important and very special for UPSC aspirants. If you're preparing for 2026, then this YouTube channel shall be the one stop destination for your current affairs needs and as well as for preparing for important static topics. Based on student demand, from today we are launching a new initiative, Conquer UPSC 2026. This will include a new set of initiatives every single day, along with our regular ongoing initiatives. All you have to do is ensure that you log into our channel at 10 a.m. in the morning and 7 p.m. in the evening. So, as always, in the morning, we'll conduct the daily Hindu news analysis, providing you the detailed analysis of the Hindu newspaper. And every Thursday, Shamsar will continue with Economy This Week, providing you a roundup of economy current affairs at 5 p.m. every Thursday. So these are the regular ongoing initiatives, apart from all the current affairs videos and strategy videos that we provide. But other than that, from Monday to the end of the week, every day at 7 p.m. in the evening, we will be bringing new initiatives to help you cover the static portion of your syllabus and as well as the current affairs that is needed for the exam, especially to help you prepare for the ethics portion. Every Monday, we will bring out Ethics Simplified by Asta Ma'am, where Asta Ma'am will discuss important concepts, the static concepts from ethics, by linking them with current affairs, case studies, and providing you a holistic understanding of GS Paper 4. Then Tuesday and Wednesday, we will reserve this again for the static portion of our syllabus, where two classes essentially covering important static concepts from different subjects would be provided to you at 7 p.m. on our YouTube channel. This would also help in improving your answer writing abilities, as we will include mains questions and practice questions and provide a model answer as well to help you improve your answer writing skills. Then Thursdays, through cinematic videos, we will help you understand some of the most complex topics. Because when you visualize a topic through animations, through artistic effects, it becomes easier for you to recollect and remember. So, concepts from international relations or geography or history can be easily covered through such cinematic animated videos every Thursday at 7 p.m. Then, Friday, a one shot marathon, a session of roughly 3 hours to help you cover one entire topic, one entire concept. And this session should be more than sufficient for you to cover the topic, and you don't need anything else after that. So, we will ensure that the static portion and the current affairs portion of that particular topic is completely covered for your prelims and mains so that you don't have to go back and read that particular topic again. So every Friday in the evening at 7 p.m., we will have these marathon sessions across subjects. Then Saturday, that is starting from today, the initiative launches today with our monthly current affairs program to help you revise the current affairs of that particular month. So today evening, without fail at 7 p.m., join Sarmad Mehrat sir live as he will cover the current affairs of Indian polity. So after polity, we will also cover current affairs from science and technology, environment ecology, and as well as international relations. So don't forget, starting from today, that is 7 p.m. at on our YouTube channel, we will be launching this program, a very ambitious initiative, a honest attempt to help all the UPSC aspirants. And this initiative is absolutely free. And Sundays, the first Sunday of the month, we will also provide you a MCQ quiz, the top 50 MCQs of that entire month from all the subjects, so that you get enough practice for your prelims as well. So this program has been designed with a lot of thought behind it to cater to all the requirements of the exam, both prelims and mains, covering both the static portion and the current affairs portion. So I hope all of you will make use of these initiatives. You can supplement this along with your foundation classes that you're attending in any institute. So this one program is more than enough to help you crack 2026 attempt. So if you guys are liking this initiative, do support us with your likes and comments. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you get constant updates about these initiatives. So just remember, every day at 10 a.m. and every day at 7 p.m. Just join us on our YouTube channel and we will guarantee to take care of your UPSC preparation. And if you want the PDF of this session, please join our official Telegram channel by scanning the QR code. After the session ends, we will share the PDF over here. So let's get started and look at the first article. On page number 6, there is a column written by Shailesh Gandhi. And Shailesh Gandhi is a well-known individual. Shailesh Gandhi was a former Central Information Commissioner, known to be a progressive administrator who tried to fully enforce the RTI Act to bring out public information, that is, government information, into the public domain to ensure transparency and accountability. The RTI Act, which was enacted in 2005 by the then UPA government under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, was seen as one of India's landmark legislative reforms and governance reforms. Because Right to Information Act, it placed information in the public domain in the hands of the citizens, thus allowing citizens to play a key role in ensuring transparency, accountability, and to tackle corruption within the government. So, bringing transparency and bringing out such information into the public domain has been a key governance and administrative tool. It has been seen as part of good governance to ensure greater transparency in the functioning of the government, to hold the government and the bureaucracy accountable for the decisions that are being made, and ensure that corruption within the government can be kept under check. So, RTI was a critical tool for checks and balances in our democracy. So, under this article, the writer is examining a new threat to the RTI Act. The Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which has been recently enacted by the Parliament, contains a provision to amend one of the sections of the RTI Act. Essentially, the Parliament has provided for, that is, the government which has drafted the bill and the Parliament has enacted this law. So, there is a provision under the Digital Personal Data Protection Act which seeks to amend one of the critical provisions of the RTI Act. So, through this route, RTI Act is being amended. And according to the writer, this is a major threat for transparency and accountability. According to the writer, this amendment could basically end up destroying the very spirit of right to information. And the writer says this could become the right to deny information as well. So let's break down this topic. We'll go beyond the article and understand this in detail. But before that, let's take up a prelims practice question. Let's see if you guys can answer this one. Which of the following is not an exemption under the RTI Act? So when it comes to disclosing government information in the public domain, there are certain exemptions. On these grounds, government can withhold the information and not release that into the public domain. So what are these grounds? That is something you should know to answer this question. The question is asking which of them is not an exemption. So there are 4 options. Please let me know the correct answer in the comment section. Is it information, the disclosure of which will prejudicially affect the security, sovereignty, integrity of the nation? Or information which may constitute contempt of court? Is that exempted? Information which could embarrass the government? Information including commercial confidence, trade secrets, or intellectual property. Is this a ground on which the disclosure of information can be denied and withheld? So tell me, which of them is not an exemption provided under the RTI Act? Some of you are saying 1, 4, 3, 2, but most of them are answering as 3. Very good. 3 or C, as you can call it, A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4. The third one, the third option is the correct answer. This is not an exemption. See, under the RTI Act, the exemptions are covered under Section 8. Under Section 8, specific exemptions are listed, and I will show you those exemptions as well. These exemptions include any information, if it is released in the public domain, if it could affect the security of the nation, the sovereignty of the nation, or if it could derail India's friendly relations with a foreign government. Let's say a foreign country has given some information in confidence. And if that confidential information is released that could derail our ties with a friendly country, such information can be withheld by the government. Any information which can constitute contempt of court or breach of privilege of the parliament can be withheld as well. Information which could lead to violation of intellectual property rights, which could bring out trade secrets into the public domain, can also be withheld. But there is no such exemption where government can withhold information by stating that this could embarrass the government. This exemption is not provided. So 3 is the right answer. That is not an exemption under the RTI Act. So look at this slide. You can see all the provisions of Section 8, Clause 1. There are different grounds on which the government can withhold the information under the RTI Act. Security, sovereignty, integrity of India, contempt of court, breach of privilege of parliament or state legislature, any information that could violate trade secrets and intellectual property rights. If there is an impact on fiduciary relationship, information received from a foreign government, information that could endanger the safety, the life of a person, any investigation which is ongoing, information related to that, then cabinet papers, which are secret documents. All such information can be withheld by the government on these specific grounds. Now, please pay your attention to the last provision, Section 8, Clause 1, Subclause J. Under this provision, disclosure of information can be withheld if it compromises personal information and if it accounts as a breach of privacy. If a certain amount of information, if it is released in the public domain and if it could breach the privacy of an individual, which is the personal information of that individual. So on those grounds, information can be withheld. But however, defining personal information is quite vague. It's quite difficult. It's subjective. Even the Supreme Court said the same thing in the case Puttaswamy case, when right to privacy was declared as a fundamental right under Article 21. The Supreme Court in the case Puttaswamy judgment was of the opinion that what constitutes personal information cannot have a standard universal definition, because this will vary from case to case. Depending on the issue, what constitutes personal information will vary. It is subjective. So in this regard, the government can cite every information as personal information and try to withhold that information. Correct? So to prevent that from happening, there was a clause which was added under the original RTI Act. The act, which was passed in 2005, contained a provision, contained a test, an acid test, to ensure that government doesn't misuse this provision to withhold information by citing that it could violate someone's privacy. Because defining privacy, defining personal information is quite subjective, varies from case to case. So on these grounds, what if governments withhold the information all the time? So to prevent that from happening, in 2005, when the law was enacted, there was a acid test which was built into this provision. What is this test? If the information can be shared with the parliament, then that information deserves to be in the public domain. If some information cannot be shared with the parliament, then that information can be denied to the public. This is the acid test that was laid down under Section 8, Clause 1, Subclause J. This is the reason why the RTI Act in its original form was designed by default to share most of the information in the public domain. Almost 90% of government information related to government files and decisions made by the bureaucracy, made by the executive, could be brought into the public domain by default, because only that information which cannot be shared with the parliament can be denied to the citizens as well. Whatever information is shared with the parliament should be in the public domain, and the public information officers under the Central Information Commission, under the respective ministries and departments, they cannot deny access to such information. If it can be shared with parliament, it can be shared with citizens as well. This was the ground rule. But now, through the indirect route of Digital Personal Data Protection Act, the government has sought to amend this critical provision. Now, to understand this further, you need to first understand why citizens should have a right to information. Why is it necessary? Why is it so important? Why are we making such a big deal about it? Please understand, all government decisions are primarily taken, executed by the bureaucracy, correct? But what gives legitimacy to the bureaucracy to make decisions on your behalf? How can bureaucrats decide on welfare programs, on national security, on government schemes and policies? What gives the legitimacy to them? Who has authorized them? Who has given that authority to them? This legitimacy of the bureaucracy comes from the parliament, comes from your legislature. Is that clear? And who legitimize the parliament and the legislature? It is the people of the country, the citizens. We as citizens, we are electing our representatives to the legislature, to the parliament, which in turn, as the elected body, gives legitimacy to the executive, to the bureaucracy. So every decision taken by the bureaucracy is essentially on your behalf. So you as a citizen, you have a right to question the government, to get that information in the public domain, to know how exactly the decision was made. What were the interests that were driving this particular decision, to see whether any corrupt motive was involved. That is what will bring transparency in a democratic state. The constitution, the preamble itself states India, right? The constitutional democracy of the people, by the people. And if citizens are legitimizing the elected representatives and the legislature is legitimizing the bureaucracy, don't you think decisions made by the bureaucracy should be made available to the citizens? This is the spirit of the RTI Act. That's why I said the RTI Act in its original form was set to a default mode. What is the default mode? Majority of the information should be given to the public. Just as a rough estimate, 90% of information should be in public domain. If that information can be shared with parliament, it should be shared with the citizens as well. Only on certain grounds, if the information could compromise our national security, if it constitutes contempt of court or breach of privilege, or if it compromises trade secrets or intellectual property, and if there is a genuine case of invasion of someone's privacy, only on these specific grounds, information could be denied and withheld. But now let's see what is happening. Through the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, the government has sought to amend Section 8, Clause 1, Subclause J of RTI Act. Now, because of this amendment, I'll tell you what will happen. The definition of personal information has been given a different interpretation. See, I told you already that defining personal information is quite difficult. There's no universal standard definition for this. The Supreme Court itself had stated in case Puttaswamy case that personal information will be decided on a case-to-case basis. But through this amendment, what the government has done is that it is giving a different interpretation to the meaning of personal information under Section 8, Clause 1, Subclause J. The normal interpretation of personal information is that any information which is related to an individual, related to a normal person. Let's say, for example, let's assume I'm a government official, okay, and my biometric details, my house address, how is it relevant in the public domain? This is my private information. There is no need for that to be in the public domain. So, information which is personal to that individual, private to that individual, information related to a normal human being, to an individual, is what is generally considered as personal information. As long as it has no bearing on public interest, right? If a larger public interest can be established, then even that information can be released in the public domain. Let's say at my home, I have stashed huge piles of money through my corrupt activities. Then my home address deserves to be in the public domain because there is a larger public interest involved to reveal an act of corruption. So, unless and until there is that larger public interest, information related to that individual remains personal. The privacy of that individual should be protected. But through the amendment, what the government is doing is that the very definition of personal information is being broadened. So there is a conflicting view about this. Now, the government can interpret personal information as information belonging to entities and organizations as well. This is where the problem lies. Information related to Hindu undivided family, information related to a firm or a company or any association of individuals or state. Even this can be classified as personal information right now because of the DPDP Act, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which is amending Section 8, Clause 1, Subclause J of RTI Act, widens the definition of personal information, basically giving the government the authority to block almost every information by citing it as personal information. Because through this amendment, personal information is not just information related to an individual. It could even be information related to a firm or a company or an entity or an association, a group of people, or even state organizations. So, by using this as an excuse, 90% of information can be blocked. So, look at the change. The original form of RTI Act was set to a default mode where 90% of information should be released in public domain. Now, because of widening the definition of personal information through this amendment, 90% information can be withheld by the government. This defeats the very purpose of RTI Act. That's why civil society activists are very outraged because this amendment could kill the RTI Act itself. That is where the concern lies. Upon this, there is one more provision, a penal provision which the government has introduced. Under the DPDP, if you violate someone's privacy, those who are responsible for violating the privacy of an individual can be fined up to 250 crore rupees. Now, this could become a deterrent for public information officers to release information. Let me explain how. Now, let's say, for example, a RTA application has been filed by a concerned citizen with regard to some government decision made by a ministry. Now, the public information officer who's supposed to decide whether the information should be given or not as per provisions of RTI Act would be worried about getting penalized under DPDP Act. Since Digital Personal Data Protection Act says that a person's privacy cannot be compromised, and if someone violates the privacy, there will be a fine up to 250 crore rupees. So that officer, the PIO, will be scared, will be deterred. He will think about the consequences. Now, let's say I release this information today. Tomorrow, what if he is blamed for releasing personal information, seen as a violator of DPDP Act, and levied with a hefty penalty running into lakhs of rupees or crores of rupees? So this becomes a deterrent, and PIOs will play it safe. It's natural. When they know that they might be penalized on these grounds, later someone says that this information was private and personal. If they get penalized for it, what they will do is they will become more cautious. They will become less risk taking. They'll become risk averse. So it's rather safer for them to block all the information rather than give it out to the public. So these are the two changes which are concerning as far as the RTI Act is concerned. That's why the writer is urging the civil society, urging the citizens to raise their voice against these changes that are being made. Of course, this is a one sided view. The government strongly defends these provisions. The government says it is equally important to protect someone's privacy. In the digital world, there is a high risk of data privacy being breached. So that's the reason why this protection has been added according to the government. But if you look at this from the other perspective, this could basically become an indirect weapon to kill the RTI Act. So let me know what you think about this. Is the writer correct about being worried that the government is trying to kill the RTI Act? Or is the government right in providing for such provisions to ensure that privacy is protected and a balance is maintained between right to information and right to privacy? So, based on this, take up a mains practice question. The DPDP's amendment of Section 8(1) Clause J, Subclause J of RTI Act has led to serious concerns. Critically examine. So, how do you approach this question? In the introduction, talk about the role, the significance of RTI. Why RTI is important for transparency, for accountability, for tackling corruption in the government. So, this can be one of the introduction. Or the other approach is to set the context. You can provide the details of how DPDP Act is amending Section 8, Clause 1, Subclause J of RTI on the grounds of personal information and how this could threaten the RTI Act itself, how it could become right to deny information. So you're setting the context, even that can be a good introduction. Then in the body, detail the provisions. Talk about the exemptions to RTI, specifically Section 8, Clause 1, Subclause J. Discuss the interpretation of personal information. Mention the previous acid test which was present, where it was mandated that any information which could be given to the parliament should be given to citizens as well, unless and until there is a larger public interest involved. Right? Personal on grounds of personal information and privacy, information could be withheld. But if larger public interest was established, that could be released in the public domain. So bring out those ground rules that were there before, and how by default under RTI the ground rule was to share information with the public, not to withhold information. Withholding information was an exception. So bring this out in the body and then explain the changes, the amendment, and talk about the concerns raised by the amendment. But here you have to be balanced. Don't take a one sided view like the writer. That's why in every article we always discuss different sides of this argument. You can present both sides of the argument. You can say that the amendment has been done through DPDP to ensure right to information doesn't compromise right to privacy. To maintain the balance between right to information and digital privacy, this amendment has been done. Justify the government's position as well. Then highlight that there are some concerns raised by experts, raised by civil society activists, that this could become a ground for denying access to information. Now that the interpretation of personal information is going to change, even information related to entities, organizations can be labeled as personal information, and on the grounds of privacy, it can be blocked. Talk about the deterrent on PIOs, the fear of being penalized for any possible violations of privacy, how it could deter PIOs from releasing information. So by default, they will withhold information instead of releasing it. So mention these concerns and suggest a way forward. That is how you approach answer writing. Step by step, there should be a logical flow in your answer. The structure should make sense. It should do justice to the given question. So I hope these discussions are helping you to improve your answer writing skills. Now let's look at the next article. On the same page, there's another important article related to gender rights with regard to property rights amongst tribals. The article is specific to the rights, the property right of women within tribal communities. See, this article has been brought out because recently the Supreme Court passed a very important judgment in July, just a couple of months ago. The Supreme Court was hearing a property related dispute. This property dispute was related to a family from the Gond tribe found in central and eastern parts of India. So here the argument was, should women be given a equal share of property? This was the question being addressed. And the Supreme Court was clearly of the opinion in the Ramcharan case. In the Ramcharan case, the Supreme Court ruled that denying equal property rights to tribal women is a denial of their right to equality. It's a violation of right to equality, which is a guaranteed fundamental right. Now, why does this issue come up? Haven't we heard that under the current succession laws that we have, women have equal rights? The daughter in a family has as much equal right as that of the son in the family. This is a settled matter. But how come this issue is propping up? That's because succession laws are different for scheduled tribes in the country. Scheduled tribes enjoy constitutional protection. Scheduled tribes follow their customary tribal practices when it comes to inheritance and succession. They are not bound by, let's say, Hindu Succession Act and the other succession inheritance laws that are there in the country. So this is where tribal women are being met with injustice. In the name of tribal customs, tribal women are being denied their equal share in property, and this is a gross injustice. It is unconstitutional. It's a violation of fundamental rights. And correctly, the Supreme Court has pointed out in the Ramcharan case in July 2025 that if you deny equal share in property to tribal women just because you're trying to protect tribal customs, then that is a violation of right to equality. So let's understand this a little further. Now, if you look at the fifth schedule areas, I hope everyone knows the fifth schedule. The fifth schedule contains special provisions for the administration of tribal areas in the country. We also have the sixth schedule providing for autonomous provisions in some tribal districts in northeast India, in Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya, and Mizoram. So, under these provisions of fifth and sixth schedule, special protection is provided for tribal land, tribal customs. Your regular laws will not apply to such tribal communities in fifth schedule areas, sixth schedule areas. They have been given a degree of autonomy to follow their tribal customs, be it for marriage, be it for inheritance, succession, divorce, adoption, etc. In these personal matters, tribal customs are allowed to remain supreme to protect the indigenous communities. But in the name of protecting tribal customs, you can't deny equal rights to tribal women. That is the underlying point. Is that clear? See, there are few tribal communities in our country which have a matrilineal structure. For example, in Northeast India, there are several tribal groups in Meghalaya, in Nagaland, in Mizoram as well, which have a matrilineal structure where the women of the household inherit the property. But apart from these communities, in rest of the country, it's a patriarchal, patrilineal structure. But in a modern civilized world, in a constitutional democracy, you can't have such distinctions based on gender when it comes to inheritance of property and succession. The children of a couple should have equal rights to the inherited property, be it a son or a daughter. They should have equal rights. Now, because tribal customs are followed, sometimes there has been a justification that the property need not be divided equally between the sons and the daughters. The sons take away the entire share, leaving nothing for the daughters. This is a violation of gender rights, a violation of fundamental right to equality. That is why the Supreme Court also has made it clear that The government should come out with a law. That is the only way out. The way forward is that there should be a statutory provision regarding this. There should be a law, a separate act that will ensure equal share of property, even in tribal communities. Let tribal land be protected. Let tribal other customs and language be protected. But when it comes to division of property, women of the tribal household should also have equal rights. See, this is very concerning because if you look at the All India Agricultural Survey of 2015-2016, within the scheduled tribe community, you know how much percentage of land is owned by women? It is just 16.7%. Remaining 83% of tribal land is owned by men. Look at the discrimination, 16% to 83%. To end this divide, you need a separate law so that women also get equal share of the tribal land which is being inherited. That is the key point we take away from this article and take up this mains practice question. It is a matter of deep gender injustice that most tribal women do not have statutory rights in ancestral property. Discuss and suggest a way forward. So please take this up and write an answer and post your answers in the comment section. Next, we have another interesting article on page number 6. There's an editorial related to the scams that are perpetrated by misusing social media platforms. I'm sure you must have seen a lot of fraudulent videos, online posts on social media, or you might have even received certain communication on social media, messages in your DMs, or a direct call uh, on social media apps like WhatsApp and Telegram, or DMs on Facebook or Instagram, asking you to invest in a very lucrative scheme, especially crypto schemes. I'm sure many of you would have received such messages or calls, or at least you would have even seen ads and certain videos and posts encouraging you to invest in such schemes, promising you unbelievable returns. Now, this has become a persistent problem. These are obviously fraudulent schemes. See, when it comes to making money, there is no easy way out. If there is a scheme which is too good to be true, assume that it's going to be a scam. It's a fraudulent investment scheme. But unfortunately, many people in the country will not have that awareness. They'll not have that financial and digital literacy. Even educated people, highly educated people fall prey to these scams and lose their life savings. Recently, there was one incident which comes to my mind. In Hyderabad, there was a retired doctor. He had saved throughout his life, he had managed to save around 20, 30 lakh rupees. And he saw a ad, a video on social media platforms. The video contained Nirmala Sitharaman, our finance minister, urging the citizens to invest in a crypto scheme, promising very good returns. The retired doctor was not aware of such frauds and such deep fake videos. It was an AI generated deep fake video of Nirmala Sitharaman. He believed that it was actually the finance minister asking people to invest, and he transferred his entire life savings of almost 20 lakh rupees, and he lost that entire amount. So look at the tragedy behind this, the human suffering, the financial loss. It's not just a loss for the individual, it's a loss for the nation, for the economy as well. Such scams and frauds have been rising at an exponential rate. So, this is where it is very important for all the stakeholders to play a critical role, to take the right steps to curb these frauds and scams as soon as possible. Because these are preventable. Right now, the efforts by the central government, the state government, the police, the security agencies, the social media firms, it is all scattered. It is not sufficient to prevent these scams and frauds from happening, especially with artificial intelligence, with generative AI. Such hyper realistic deep fake videos and images can be generated that it is extremely hard to detect what is real and what is fake. So, in this era of AI driven fake news, manipulated videos, it is very, very critical to curb these scamsters. This requires a coordinated effort. The government should put in place strict regulations to be followed by social media firms. Now, you might say, sir, we already have IT rules that the government has notified and amended as well, which places social media firms under strict regulation. Correct, I agree. Under the IT rules, now social media firms are mandated to have an office in India, to be registered in India. They should appoint a grievance redressal officer. There should be a contact person whom the security forces and agencies can reach out to take down any content which is violating the law, or to seek their assistance, the assistance of the social media companies in investigating these scams and frauds. So those mandates are already there. But this has not been enough. Because, see, look at the world of social media. Right now, the social media companies are trying to regulate such content as well. They have automated algorithms which try to detect such fake news, manipulated videos, etc. They have manual review teams as well. You can even report such posts and videos, right? The users can report this as well. But the scale of global content is so massive that no amount of manual review or even automated checks is sufficient to address this problem, right? Even a company like, let's say, Meta, how many posts they can review manually? Even if they bring in automated algorithms, will it actually filter out all the content? Because social media firms, they have a profit motive. It's a private enterprise after all. Now, their profit motive is served when they protect their users and their privacy and the content they are posting. Social media firms are more inclined towards protecting the user's privacy. There's no harm in it. But the problem here is when the intent is more towards protecting the individuals who are posting on their platforms, the effort or the proactiveness which is needed to identify such scams would actually receive a second priority. Because social media companies, they have the tendency to review the post and then decide whether it should be taken down or not, whether it goes against their community standards or not. So by the time they take the decision, by the time they address this fraudulent practice, the scamsters would have already scammed many people. They would have looted the money of several people before actual action is taken, before police forces, cyber police agencies step in and force the social media companies to act against these scamsters. The scams would have already happened. And in most cases, scamsters are in different countries. They could be sitting in Cambodia, Thailand, or in Russia, or in some African country. So this will require transboundary cooperation. This will require global efforts to hunt down these scamsters and to take them down from the root. Right? So there is an incredible challenge here when it comes to such scams. It's hard to prevent them, but with right efforts, with concerted effort, coordinated effort from the government, the central government, the state, the police forces, and global coordination and cooperation from social media companies. Social media companies have the biggest obligation here to work with the authorities, to work with law enforcement, to cooperate with them, and to follow the law of the land. It is this concerted, proactive effort which is needed to tackle such scams. And along with this, you need better awareness amongst our people. You need to promote digital and financial literacy, not just as a one time exercise, but as a regular practice. You might have already seen ads by the government itself on radio, in newspapers, in television, even on social media platforms, trying to spread awareness about these scams, these frauds which are occurring. But that is not enough. This has to be inculcated on a day to day basis. How about teaching this in schools? How about engaging the community regularly, conducting mock drills and exercises, involving the people constantly so that they're aware that such scams are coming up, understand the methods through which these scams are being carried out? Spread that information, spread that awareness on a day to day basis, on a regular basis. It can't be a one time effort. It should be a continuous effort to spread that literacy, the financial digital literacy. So people are aware of such scams happening and they will be more cautious after that. So this is something we learn from this important editorial. Now, coming to the other important articles in today's paper, on the front page, there's an important update regarding the crisis in Nepal. We have covered this particular topic in the previous sessions. So please note the update. What is the update? Following the violent Gen Z protests, which was triggered by the ban on social media by Nepal's government, the widespread protests, which targeted the political establishment, completely uprooted Nepal's politics, led to a regime change. The Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli resigned. Politicians were targeted, brutally beaten up, and killed and burned as well. Unprecedented events have taken place in our neighboring country. Now, finally, some sense of normalcy is coming back. Yesterday, a new interim prime minister has been sworn in by the president of Nepal. The president, who was contemplating resignation as well, finally decided to stay in office after the protesters proposed few names who was acceptable to them as the interim leader for the country. So, following this, President Ramchandra Paudel has administered the oath to the most favored candidate, the former Chief Justice of Nepal, Sushila Karki. This is a big development. Now, what we need to understand here is the profile of Sushila Karki. Now, how is this relevant for our exams? It is extremely relevant because Nepal is a crucial country for India. It is sandwiched between India and China. We have strategic interests in Nepal. Our security interests are tied to Nepal. There has been a constant India China competition in Nepal. So, the leader of this important country will play an important role. Because we have seen leaders like KP Oli who have been openly anti India and pro China. Under KP Oli, he has been the prime minister for 3 times since 2016. And each and every time, KP Oli was known for his anti India policies, his anti India rhetoric. He aggravated the Kalapani border dispute. He tried blocking India's investments. He questioned the opening of Lipu Lake Pass, whereas he accepted Chinese funds and investments and ensured Nepal became part of the Belt and Road Initiative. So it's very important to develop the profile, understand the character of a new leader. What could be their bias, their inclinations, their influences? How would they uh, perform once they assume office? Would it be pro India or would it be against India or would it be neutral? So understanding this is an essential part of diplomacy. So Sushila Karki, in my opinion, might turn out to be a pro India leader. If not pro India, at least she might turn out to be a very balanced leader who might balance India versus China. Why? And how am I saying this? That's because Sushila Karki has roots with India. He studied in India, and her husband is from the Nepali Congress, a political party which has historically been close to the Indian establishment. Yeah. And as the Chief Justice, when she became the Chief Justice of Nepal, she was the first woman Chief Justice in 2016. She has delivered some progressive judgments, forward looking judgments. She had given decisions against the corruption in the political establishment. She had taken important decisions related to social and economic reforms in Nepal. So, this is a positive sign as she believes in democratic institutions. It could help in restoration of democracy, stabilization of democracy, and pave the way for elections, which have now been announced for March next year. The president has announced that by March next year, fresh elections could be conducted. So, to ensure this transition, a leader like Shushila Karki could play a very crucial role. And most probably, she would end up being a pro India leader, or at least would be more balanced and protect India's core interests while dealing with China as well. Because you can't expect Nepal to ignore China. No country can ignore China. So, we have no problem if Nepal works with China, let them. But as long as Nepal can take care of India's core interests, our security and strategic interests, India should be okay with that. So, that is why understanding this is important. Next, another important update from economy. Retail inflation has finally jumped slightly to 2.1%. Because for the last 9 months, retail inflation had been dropping You can see in the graph how retail inflation was consistently dropping for the last 9 months from November 2024. In fact, it had even become a matter of slight concern because see the RBI, the Monetary Policy Committee of RBI, it has a defined band within which inflation should be targeted. The Monetary Policy Committee of RBI, it has been given an ideal target of 4%. 4% inflation is the ideal number. But there is a range which has been given, plus or minus 2%. So the range within which inflation should be kept is between 2% to 6%, with 4% being the ideal inflation rate. So this would allow the Monetary Policy Committee to balance the needs of promoting growth while ensuring inflation is kept under check. But when inflation dropped under 2% and kept on dropping for 9 months, it was triggering some concern. The drop in inflation was mainly because the Monetary Policy Committee, through previous rate increase, had sucked out the liquidity as well from the economy, thus ensuring that inflation goes down. Plus, the prices of food, beverages, and several essential commodities, even fuel, had remained very stable, constant for a long time. But now we are seeing a slight increase, and inflation has come back into the range of Monetary Policy Committee at 2.1%. So going forward, if inflation continues to keep inching up to 3%, 4%, and if it goes beyond that, we might see the Monetary Policy Committee coming into action again to try and curb inflation. But until then, the RBI's Monetary Policy Committee will favor growth, meaning we can even expect rate cuts to release some liquidity to boost growth at a time of global uncertainty. Correct? But as the inflation keeps on inching upwards, moving towards 5, 6% and beyond, then you will see RBI stepping in again, the Monetary Policy Committee, increasing the rates to suck out the liquidity. So this is something that you need to understand. Then, with regard to reservation for disabilities, for those with disabilities, the Supreme Court has raised a very, very important question. The Supreme Court has questioned the government of India as to what measures is the government taking to ensure that the policy of reservation for those who suffer from disabilities will provide for upward mobility. Now, let me explain this quickly. It's more of an update that you should note down. See, when it comes to people with disabilities, right, they are at a natural disadvantage. So, to create equal opportunities for them, to bring them into mainstream, we have the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. The Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2017 that provides for reservation through Section 34. So there is a statutory provision here. Now, if you look at government jobs, seats are reserved for those who suffer from disabilities, and the candidates from this category, the deserving candidates who actually suffer from the prescribed disabilities, will be eligible for these particular posts. So this is a tool to ensure social justice and ensure equality for those suffering from disabilities. But there can be instances where a disabled candidate might outperform, and he or she might get marks which is on par with toppers from general category. For each category, in the, let's say, in the reserved category for disabilities, there is a certain cutoff. But what if a disabled candidate has outperformed the cutoff itself? So in that case, the candidate with disability should be treated as a unreserved candidate in the general category, because anyways the candidate will be getting that post. Now this is what happens in OBC reservation. If candidates are outperforming the cutoff, they're essentially treated under the unreserved category. That essentially vacates the reserved seats for those from backward classes who are underperforming. Because reservation is meant to provide that upward mobility. It's meant to ensure equity in the society. So in case of OBC reservation, there is this provision where if the candidates are outperforming the cutoff, they are treated under the unreserved category, because anyways they're getting those seats, and the reserved seats are kept for the underperforming students from the backward classes. This is called upward mobility being introduced into reservation. But in case of those from disabilities, this provision is not there. Those suffering from disabilities, even if, let's say, the candidate is above the cutoff, he's not treated as part of the unreserved category, and the seats are not given to those underperforming candidates with disabilities. That's why the Supreme Court has asked the question to the government. What are you doing to ensure upward mobility? If you don't treat such candidates who are outperforming as unreserved candidates and vacate those seats, give it to other aspirants who are actually underperforming because of their disability, that is when the true purpose of reservation will be served. That is how you will uphold the true spirit of reservation. If you ensure that as many people or aspirants are uplifted, if someone is outperforming, you can treat them as a general category student, and the others who are underperforming, they should get the benefits. This upward mobility is not seen in case of reservation given to the people with disabilities. So that is the question the Supreme Court has raised, and it has asked the union government to answer this one. So this is a case that we should follow going forward. Next, on page 11, Adani Ports has placed a ban on sanctioned vessels from using its ports. The Adani Ports SEZ operates more than 15 port terminals in our country. It's a major player when it comes to seaports. It's not just the Mundra port in Gujarat. Adani Ports is a major player when it comes to maritime trade, and it operates nearly 15 plus terminals in the country along the west coast, east coast, and the southern coast of India. Across all the ports, the company has now placed a ban on those shipping vessels which are sanctioned. Now, this could directly affect the import of Russian crude oil into India. Because see, Adani Ports is under pressure, under international pressure. Both US and European Union have been tightening the sanctions on companies around the world which are engaging and trading with Russia. You might remember recently, European Union has sanctioned an Indian and Russian joint energy company called Nayara Energy. Even Reliance Industries is under the crosshairs of US and EU regulators. They are looking to sanction these Indian firms for importing and procuring and processing and exporting Russian oil. So now Adani Ports is coming under this pressure of sanctions from US and European Union, and it has placed a ban on the entry of sanctioned vessels, particular ships which have been identified by Western countries, which are essentially transporting Russian crude. So if this takes effect, this could significantly affect the flow of Russian oil into India. Is that clear? Because see, Mundra port alone handles a large part of the crude oil imports into our country, especially the crude which is supplied to the refineries in northern parts of India. Right now, we are importing almost 35 to 40% of our crude oil requirement from Russia alone. And a large part of it is being received at Mundra port in particular. So if Adani port places this ban, these vessels are not allowed, then this could significantly hurt the procurement of Russian oil into India. Is that clear? So that is one update that you should note down. Next, one last update. Just yesterday, we spoke about the two-state solution. Remember? I explained India's principled position, ideological commitment with regard to the two-state solution, how India has supported the creation of both Israel and Palestine, the establishment of Palestine as a viable state, as a sovereign viable state. This remains a commitment of India. And yesterday, there was a voting at UN General Assembly on the two-state solution. This declaration, which was pushed by France and Saudi Arabia, has been named as the New York Declaration. You can make a note of this. The New York Declaration was pushed by France and Saudi, calling upon the UN members to support the creation of Palestine, to bring the war in Gaza to an end, and ensure that a better future is created for both Israelis and Palestinians. 142 countries have supported this resolution, including India. This again shows our balanced approach when it comes to dealing with Israel and Palestine and the Arab nations. While we maintain our strategic ties with Israel, we never openly directly criticize Israel or vote against Israel. But when it comes to two-state solution and the right of Palestinians and the creation of Palestine, India will always support this. This has been our commitment. And this allows us to maintain that balance between the conflicting sides in West Asian geopolitics. Now, coming to the prelim section, let's quickly go through the smaller articles and then we will wrap up the discussion for today. On page 10, there's a small article which which talks about the new naval base that has been set up by the Indian Navy in Gurugram, INS Aravali, named after the Aravali mountain ranges, which essentially tapers in the Gurugram region. The Aravali Mountains, which extends in the uh, from the Delhi to the Rajasthan Gujarat belt, right, in a east to west, in a northeast to southwest direction. It tapers in Gurugram, and after the Aravali range, this new naval station has been named. Now, isn't this a little surprising? Usually, naval stations, naval bases are present on coastline or on islands, Lakshadweep, Andaman, or in coastal locations like, let's say, Cochin or Chennai or Mumbai, Vishakhapatnam, Karwar. Then how come a naval base is being set up in Gurugram? What purpose does it serve? See, in Gurugram, the Indian Navy operates a critical command and control center. It's known as IFCIOR, Information Fusion Center for Indian Ocean Region. Have you heard of the Coastal Radar Project? The Coastal Surveillance Radar Project of India. It was started after the 26/11 Mumbai attacks, which exposed our maritime security gaps. The then Manmohan Singh government launched the Coastal Surveillance Radar Project, installing a series of coastal radars along India's coastline, from Gujarat to West Bengal, and even covering our island territories of Andaman and Lakshadweep. This was phase one of Coastal Radar Project. These radars will essentially track the movement of vessels all across the Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, and the Indian Ocean. And all the radar data is fed into one central headquarters, a command center, which is IFC IOR. This project has been implemented in phase two as well. And these coastal radars have been set up in foreign countries, in friendly foreign nations like Mauritius, Seychelles, and others. So today, Indian Navy has the capability to track the movement of vessels almost all across the Indian Ocean. So this generates maritime domain awareness. This is what we call as maritime intelligence or naval intelligence. It will help you detect the movement of ships, identify friend from enemy, track the fishing boats, the cargo vessels, and even foreign naval ships which are passing through. And according to reports, this entire surveillance infrastructure even has the ability to track submarines when they are moving across the Indian Ocean region by drawing data from satellites and even reconnaissance planes like the P-8I Poseidon. So all these reconnaissance surveillance platforms have been integrated from our military satellites, which can keep track of vessels and submarines, to surveillance aircraft like the P-8I Poseidon and the coastal surveillance radar chain that we have set up in India and in friendly countries. All this data is collaborated at IFC IOR in Gurugram on the outskirts of Delhi. This acts as the National Command Control Center for Naval Intelligence, for maritime domain awareness. In fact, the center is so crucial, many foreign navies have partnered with India, deployed their liaison officers. US, Japan, Russia, UK, France, and many, many other countries have sent their liaison officers to work with Indian Navy and to share the naval intelligence, to develop maritime domain awareness. So this communication hub and intelligence hub is now being converted into a full-fledged naval station, INS Aravali. So this center will enable the future of network-centric warfare driven by naval intelligence, maritime domain awareness. Is that clear? So that is the new naval station which has been set up. Next, Prime Minister Modi has launched Gyan Bharatam portal or the Gyan Bharatam mission. Gyan Bharatam under the Gyan Bharatam mission, a dedicated digital portal has been launched by Prime Minister Modi. Now, what is this initiative? This falls under the National Manuscripts Mission. And in this year's budget, the government had promised this initiative. The 25-26 budget, the government had promised to launch a portal to digitize the manuscripts which contains ancient traditional knowledge. See, India is one of the most ancient civilizations in the world, and manuscripts are the records which keeps that traditional knowledge alive, from knowledge of governance and administration to science and technology, right? And it helps us better understand our history, our past, our culture, our civilizational history. So India has begun a mammoth effort to digitize the manuscripts which are available. According to estimates, there are more than 1 crore manuscripts available in India, most of it with the government, some with private collectors as well. These age old, ancient, medieval manuscripts are being digitized under this initiative, the National Manuscript Mission, which is implemented by the Ministry of Culture. Ministry of Culture is the nodal ministry. The funding comes from this year's budgetary allocation, and the Gyan Bharatam portal has been launched. The government is collaborating with other foreign countries as well, where Indian manuscripts have been found. Countries like Thailand, Mongolia, Vietnam. India will partner with these countries in Southeast Asia and beyond to get hold of any manuscripts which are linked to the Indian civilization and to digitize them, provide digital copies of these manuscripts, and make them available for research, for knowledge sharing. So, this mission is being implemented in 3 phases. First, the effort is to create an inventory of all the manuscripts, digitize them in a structured manner, then make it available in the public domain, especially for researchers, for academicians, students, etc. And then promote awareness, promote its global availability, hold conferences, seminars, and ensure that the richness of Indian civilization spreads through the digitization of our manuscripts. So that is why this topic is very important. Next, last 2 topics, and we will wrap up the session. China has been conducting the sea trials of its new aircraft carrier, the Fujian. This is a new massive aircraft carrier, a super aircraft carrier built by the Chinese Navy, the PLA Navy, and it is currently undergoing sea trials before it will be commissioned. So China is building up its carrier capabilities primarily to counter the United States, which has been poking around the neighborhood of China. Now, can you see this narrow water body here between mainland China and Taiwan? This is your Taiwan Strait. Given China's historical claims over Taiwan and eventual plans to even occupy and annex Taiwan, the Western countries, especially US and some European powers like UK and others, they have been meddling in the Taiwan Strait. Every now and then, US Navy, British Navy as well, sometimes the French Navy as well, they deploy into the Taiwan Strait as US supplies arms and weapons to Taiwan and provides financial military support. This instigates China, and China is trying to defend its own interests. And the new aircraft carrier Fuyan has been deployed into the Taiwan Strait to basically send out a strong message, a signal to the US not to meddle in Chinese waters. This vessel has been spotted recently conducting trials near the disputed Senkaku Diaoyu Islands as well, located over here, which is disputed between China and Japan in the East China Sea. So these are some important locations for a map-based question. And also note down the name of this aircraft carrier. China will be commissioning this very soon, and China is gearing up to match the naval might of the US, because US Navy is primarily a carrier-based navy, a true blue water navy. China is also building up similar capabilities to counter the carrier fleet of the US, which is deployed in the Indo-Pacific. Coming to the last article, Russia and Belarus have started a controversial series of military exercises aimed at countering NATO influence in Eastern Europe. This military exercise is known as Zapad exercise. So make a note, the Zapad exercise is a series of military exercises between the Russian and the Belarusian armed forces. It's a very large scale exercise being conducted on land, in the air, and also in the water. In Eastern Europe, Russia, Belarus have mobilized large number of troops along with heavy equipment. We recently saw the incursion of Russian drones into the airspace of Poland, which is a NATO member. This triggered serious alarm in Poland, and Poland has started a counter mobilization, and all the NATO countries are on high alert. The exercise is also being conducted in the Barents Sea and towards the Arctic, where Russia has deployed naval assets with Belarus to conduct these military exercises. So, this has increased the tensions between NATO countries and Russia. See, Belarus is a close ally of Russia. The Belarusian dictator is a very close friend of Russian President Putin. Together, these military exercises, the Zapad exercise, is posing a threat to NATO's influence. There is a fear that Russia might try to test NATO defenses by breaching NATO's defense systems that are placed in Eastern Europe. That is why these exercises have attracted a lot of global attention. So, on this note, I bring my discussion to an end. I hope you guys have understood all the key topics. And if you like the session, do press the like button and let me know what you think in the comments below. So, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.